Welcome to the 185th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome, and thank you for listening. So I'm a little bit further than 6-7 weeks out. I don't do the math from the Sacramento, California International Marathon. That's the first week in December. So I'm doing my reverse taper. So this week, mileage is increasing. Still riding a bike on Sunday. Still swimming 1 day a week. Still doing my weight training. Have a new session in the weight training, building back up. My strength and conditioning coach, Nathan Meinerich, is really helping me out. I'm seeing some improvement in that. I can feel it during my running, a little bit more speed. I'm trying to, do some pickup and trying to get some speed back in my legs after the long, slow marathon of the Ironman. So that's kind of, my goal this time is to try to get my speed back up, but not get hurt in the process because we have a lot of races coming up. Probably do an ultra in the early winter, and we have our Asheville double in March, and then perhaps another ultra in April. So we're trying to figure that out. We're also doing the push-up challenge still in the office. It's go through October. So I guess it's the 26th today. So I wasn't very smart and didn't do the math. So I'm doing one on day 1, 1 and 2 on day 2, 1, 2, and 3 on day 3. So today I did 351 push-ups. They were modified, some for my knees, some for my some regular push-ups, some against the wall. Any way I can to get 351 push-ups in. It takes time. 20 here, 10 there. So I got the 351 in on top of everything else. So, but it's all good. I'm feeling stronger. I think everybody in the membership practice is feeling stronger and confident. When we first started this, people were afraid that they couldn't do a push-up at all. So we showed them a modified push-up against the wall. Then you can do them against the chair or the table or the bed and work your way down to your knees and to the floor. You can do negative push-ups. So there's all kinds of different ways to do push-ups, and just by trying them and doing something every day, you actually get stronger. And I can tell I'm stronger doing, again, a variety of different ways. So it's really, really good. In class this week, we have 3 nutrition class. Our level 1 class, we did a tofu egg sandwich. When I was growing up, we used to have egg sandwiches on occasion, and it's like, how are you going to do that? So I take a firm piece of tofu and slice it long ways, 4 ways, and marinate that in turmeric, mustard, a little light soy sauce, and a touch of black salt, which gives it this sulfurized smell. And dry fry that in a pan and put that on a piece of Ezekiel bread with some tomatoes. Good. Everybody likes it. That was a surprise for everybody. People are all bent out of shape over tofu. It's one of those hippie things, I guess, or some, people think it's processed. It's actually made the same way as you make cottage cheese for the most part. You take soybeans and that are you take soy milk and you coagulate it with either calcium or a magnesium coagulant, and you make it into the block, and it can be firm or soft or extra firm. So it's not heavily processed. And we know that the Asian people have much less breast cancer and much less prostate cancer than we do. There's a whole host of things that soy actually benefits. It's a phytoestrogen, estrogen-like, so it actually blocks the estrogen receptors. So I did a blog post about this. If you want to check that recent blog post out this week on my website, drdulaney.com. It's DoctorDulaney.com. I go over a lot of the literature on soy. It is safe. It is good for you. You should incorporate it into your diet. Some people may say, well, what about the calories? What about the fat? Well, again, there are a lot of health benefits to it, just like beans. If you eat too many of them, of any other kind, can be high calorie. Perhaps, you can get into the high fat. You just have to, eat a serving size. So, 1 tofu egg or a little tempeh as a part of your meal is not going to hurt anyone, especially if it's a part of a well-balanced, high greens, high fiber diet. So don't worry. In the other class, we did a white pizza. So I made a whole wheat crust. I like to put my crust in an iron skillet and put those in the oven. And the white pizza sauce was artichoke, basil, and garlic. Everybody liked that. We topped it with tomatoes and spinach. And then in class today, we made a pita bread and tabbouleh. So that was also good. Tabbouleh, again, a lot of parsley. Tomatoes, cucumbers, and we use barley as the grain. So again, a lot of fiber, nitric oxide producing from the parsley, a lot of vitamin C from the tomatoes, lemon juice as a dressing. Again, a lot of vitamin C and antioxidants. So tabbouleh is a great salad to have on hand, and it keeps. You can keep it 2 or 3 days in the refrigerator. So make a big bowl. It's a great thing to have with lunch. So you could have a baked potato and tabbouleh. Great lunch ideas. So, as most of you know, when I run or drive, I listen to podcasts, and always something comes up that's intriguing. It's kind of funny how it all kind of ties together a little bit, but I heard an interview about a very famous restaurant, and they casually mentioned in the interview that the chef, who was extremely creative and extremely artistic, got cancer. And never was it mentioned during the interview that what he ate may have contributed to his cancer. It was just one of those things that, he was afflicted to, and as far as I know, made it across the other side. It's in remission at this point. But I thought it was interesting that nobody ever addressed, did he change his diet? What kind of cancer? How might he change his lifestyle? And it brought up the question to me, what makes a restaurant good? This particular restaurant, people actually pay in advance to get a table. The meals cost hundreds of dollars. And it's very, very rich food. It's multiple courses, so it's going to be extremely high calorie. And, they talked about things that make this restaurant fabulous. The architecture of the actual restaurant, the tables, the kind of tables, rather than a white cloth, they had a hard table, wooden tables, how they wanted it presented. Every little last detail they thought of at this restaurant. And of course, then they had this very rich food. So, the question comes, what makes a restaurant great? Is it when you walk in the door, people know your name? Is it the service that you get? People greet you with a smile. You're not greeted with an iPad and you're just a number. You're made to feel special. Is it the food? Is it something that you can't make at home? Is it an ingredient that you're not used to? Is it just that you're going out and you don't have to cook? What do you think about when you go out? Is it you're going out to have and socialize with your friends? Is it a place that everybody's comfortable? Is it just a location that's convenient? So I think it's kind of important when we talk about, restaurants, because that really throws a wrench in plant-based nutrition a lot of times. Everybody wants to go out and socialize. That's one of the main reasons, for going out to dinner. You want to get quality for the money that you pay. I think most people, want to, have a nice dining experience. And how much of a role does the food play? We talk about in class that, you can go to the Outback chain restaurant and you could order a baked potato and steamed vegetables and a salad. But the Outback is known for steaks and, high fat, high greasy food. That's what you smell when you go in there. So are you going to be okay, not eating that kind of stuff? Does that decrease the dining experience? Why do you go to the Outback anyway? Is it just because you're meeting your friends there? Is it a convenient location? Is it something that that is the same if you go to the Outback in Texas versus Pennsylvania versus Florida? So those are kind of things, I think most of the time people sometimes just go out to go out, and they don't think about why they're actually going a particular place. And I think sometimes people hang on to a particular restaurant for no particular reason as well. Maybe it's someplace where there's a view. But, are there things that you can do to compromise that, perhaps it could be someplace where everybody has a choice of food and there's plant-based food, or there's, there's options for people that don't want to eat meat. And yet it has a good ambiance and people are nice and you're treated well and, everybody's taken care of. So, perhaps if we can't all come to being plant-based, perhaps we can start thinking about what kind of restaurants that we're willing to spend our money for. Is it just to be able to go out and not cook? If that's all it is. So I think it's something to, perhaps think about when you're going out and you're spending your money is, are you getting the service that you would like to have? Are you being treated like you would like to be treated? There's no reason why a chef cannot make a plant-based dinner that is very beautiful to look at and nutritious. They just have to want to do it. They just have to take a little bit of time, perhaps. So if a restaurant can't, then most of the time, everything's already prepared in advance. So is that restaurant worth going out to in the first place if everything is already processed and it's been sitting there for God knows how long, and it's just going to be slapped on a plate and heated up? Is that something that you really want? Are you made to feel special if you go to a restaurant and you order something without cheese and it comes with cheese anyway, and the waitstaff either didn't take time to write that down, or didn't make sure when they were serving it to you when they picked it up, or didn't convey that to the kitchen? Did they really have your best interest at heart? Because I think if they didn't, and they said they could early on, so they said they could accommodate you, yet it came out wrong, then that restaurant is not paying attention to detail. And is that really worth your hard-earned money for? You might give them another chance. Maybe they made a mistake. But certainly if you can't get what you want on the next time, then it tells me something, and they're not paying attention to detail. So is it actually worth the effort of going there? How creative is a chef that can't figure out how to make vegetables using other spices and herbs without smothering something in oil and salt? They're not. So is that actually worth your money anyway? So then it comes down to you're just wanting to go out with your friends and, have dinner. So in that regard, then, perhaps eat before you go, or eat when you come home and have minimal amount of food, have a salad, have the potato. Then you're still, going out with people, but you're not compromising your own health. And then the next time you negotiate with your friends, hey, we need to go someplace that actually think that you're worthwhile as well. If your friends think your health is worthwhile, then they're willing to do that. Going to a greasy restaurant that's making everybody ill is really, it doesn't serve anybody. So it's like being, riding shotgun to rob a bank, so to speak. If you're going out with your friends and family to watch them put down cheese balls and greasy biscuits and, butter dipped in everything and cheese covered in everything, you're just kind of accomplice to their ill health as well. I had a question this week about Lp(a) and lipoprotein(a). So this is a marker that's genetic for increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Lp(a) looks a good bit like low-density lipoprotein, or LDL. We know that LDL is the bad cholesterol, and we'd all like our LDL someplace around 70. And if people have elevated Lp(a), then they're at risk for not only, like I said before, premature cardiovascular disease, but the Lp(a) molecule looks a little bit like plasminogen, which is involved in the clotting formation. So it kind of, nobody knows exactly how it works, but it's probably associated with the clotting process and clot formation in the blood vessel. It also binds pro-inflammatory phospholipids, and phospholipids are part of cellular membranes. And by binding, it actually attracts inflammatory cells into the blood vessel walls. So if you've ever seen Dr. Esselstyn's slide, we have not only cholesterol particles, but we have all kinds of white blood cells and macrophages and foam cells, so all these inflammatory products in the blood cell, which causes the blood vessel to actually narrow. You can kind of think of Lp(a) as the bad guy at a party that attracts more bad guys. It also increases smooth muscle cell proliferation, which causes the blood vessel to grow shut. So it's a bad player all around. Most people agree that a level greater than 50 is bad. The question is, who should get an Lp(a) check? Is getting your cholesterol checked good enough? Knowing your good cholesterol and your bad cholesterol. We know that people that have a very strong family history of coronary artery disease, especially when it occurs very young, it's a good idea to get this checked. If you have persistently elevated LDL or low-density lipoprotein or bad cholesterol, despite changing your diet, some people despite medication, then it's a reason to look to see if Lp(a) is behind that. The question is, what do you do when you have an elevated Lp(a)? Well, we know that if you have high LDL and high cholesterol and high triglycerides, you have an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. If you have high blood pressure, you have an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. If you have diabetes, you have increased risk of cardiovascular disease. If you smoke, you have an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. So the first thing you can do is change all those things. Those are things you can change. Your diet can change your LDL. And despite people saying that they're genetically have a high LDL, yes, that's true, but it still can be improved. People give up way too easy and way too early to try to improve their LDL. There is a medication, the newest injectables that lower LDL, PCSK9 inhibitors, also decrease Lp(a). However, there is a number at which the Lp(a) being too low can also be a risk factor. So if Lp(a) is too low or Lp(a) is too high, it's a problem. So if we just give people these PCSK9 inhibitors, which really knock LDL down very, very low, and we don't know even what it does to Lp(a), and we're not sure of how low is too low, you can get into trouble as well. A very low Lp(a) is associated with carotid artery plaque formation and also a bleeding stroke. So just to give somebody this medication to make the number low is not necessarily going to hurt or help people in the end. You can think back where, HDL is good cholesterol, and it's the cholesterol, what we talk of being like a garbage truck that picks up cholesterol and brings it back into the liver to be destroyed and metabolized. So we, pharmaceutical companies came up with medications to elevate the HDL, and it did, but people had more heart attacks, and they had to actually take it off the market. So just because we can lower something or raise something doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to hurt something else and make something else worse. There's probably something, to do with the metabolism of oxidized lipids. And hang on to the word oxidized fat, oxidized lipids, because what you eat, namely animal products, animal protein, causes an increase in oxidation metabolites, increased free radicals. These things lead to cardiovascular disease. So this also plays a part in what Lp(a) does. just because you have an elevated LP(a) doesn't necessarily mean you have to have it do bad things. If you're not eating animal protein and you're not generating a lot of oxidative byproducts, then it may not be so dangerous. If you control the other factors that are cardiovascular risk factors, it may not be so different. They're dangerous. So you may have this around. It's just like any other gene, but if you don't activate and light it on fire, it's not going to cause that much of a problem. We know that young people that have an acute myocardial infarction tend to have high levels of LP(a). People that have abdominal aortic aneurysms tend to have high levels of LP(a). People that have aortic stenosis tend to have high levels of LP(a). But again, these are also people that have the opportunity to control other risk factors and keep the LP(a) and its tenacity under control. So again, take away the oxidized fat, the oxidized animal protein, eating more antioxidants, eating more phytonutrients, getting your exercise, keeping your weight down, keeping your abdominal fat mass down, not, reversing diabetes. These are things that all are protective, but also can be additive. Other interventions that lower LP(a) are niacin, and niacin's a B vitamin, and it seems somewhat benign, but we know that long-acting niacin that's given in a pill form or of doses that would be needed to decrease LP(a) is also toxic to the liver and increases one's risk of diabetes. If you have diabetes, you have an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, so you really don't get anywhere. L-carnitine, which is found in meat, might also decrease LP(a) levels, but you do that at the risk of cancer, hypertension, psychosis, sleep disturbances, low blood sugar episodes, high triglyceride levels, increased risk of stroke. It also affects fatty acid metabolism. So there's a whole host of side effects associated with L-carnitine and certainly not recommended. The amino acids methionine and lysine, elevating those may decrease LP(a), but they are also associated with increased cellular aging and cancer. So we can lower a number but cause other illnesses, and we don't get anywhere with actual longevity. It all comes back to, a lot of times, the treatment is worse than the disease itself. There's some evidence to suggest that even treating with statins might ultimately decrease longevity in people because of the secondary side effects of diabetes, dementia, and the other inflammatory processes that it can increase. And this is not like, or it's not unlike a lot of other pharmaceuticals that we use to treat one disease and cause another. And, the bottom line, whether it's high cholesterol, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, cancer, the underlying mechanism, we keep coming back to is what people are actually eating. And the underlying treatment of all these without any side effects is what people are eating. And we continue to have this disconnect, and we don't want to talk about the fact that what we are eating are causing some of these diseases. We know that, at ages 40 to 55, that's a crucial time period where a lot of these genes get turned on that start to cause these lifestyle diseases. And it's also at a time in people's lives where they start eating more, eating out more, exercising less. And so they accelerate their aging process at a time where it's crucial to kind of get things under control. Your body will take just about anything, for the most part, most people, through the reproductive ages. But after that time, then people start getting these lifestyle diseases. And, so it is really the opportunity that we have at that time to really make sure that we're healthy, to kind of set, it's true. You're what you do the first 40 years set you up for the next 40 or 50 years. But especially in that window, that 40 to 55 is extremely important in setting yourself up to have a healthy lifespan, or a healthy health span, versus a lengthy life, and or a long life at that point. So, I mean, living to be 90, but spending the last 30 years in a nursing home, not knowing where you are, is not most people's idea of, wanting to live to be old. But if you could be a blues owner and be out doing what you want, traveling, having a good time at 90, then it'd be great, and enjoying life. That would be fine. But what you do at 40 to 55 is really going to decide how those later years play out, whether there even are later years. And, we had people at that health fair, and I've heard young people a lot of times, I'm not afraid to die. You got to live. I want to enjoy my life now. Nobody knows, when your ticket's going to be called. Those are all things people say when they're not having any pain or discomfort, or have an illness. That changes pretty quick when their health goes away. It's easy to be brave when you're feeling good. It's easy not to be afraid when you're feeling good. And nobody really, understands that, some of these treatments can be, pretty detrimental. So, I would encourage anybody in this middle age range and above and below is, get your act together now. Get in a mode where you're eating healthy and exercise, so that you are setting yourself up for the opportunity to live a very healthy, long life. So besides, the blood test to kind of see where you are as far as your cholesterol, there are things you can do. Are you mobile? Can you get up off the ground? Can you touch your toes? Are you flexible? How fast do you walk? Do you move well? Those are things that are very important, as far as if you can't move, or, I saw people at the health fair last week that were in their 30s, that had, what we call kyphosis, or a hunched over back from being at a computer. So how many young people that sit at a computer all day long have decreased mobility of their thoracic spine? They're bent over. You see people walking down the street looking at their cell phones. Their heads are bent down. How many of those people are going to have cervical disc problems, thoracic problems? They already do. So it's extremely important to look at that mobility. I got asked a question about what can you do about posture. Certainly one of the things you can do to assess your posture right up front is take a selfie from the side and see whether your rib cage lines up over your pelvis. It should. If you do a simple test by taking your palm facing upward and putting it on your sternum, right in the manubrium area where your sternum kind of starts to come out after your collarbone, and you put your other hand's palm up on your pubic bone, right at the top of your pelvis, those should line up. If one is behind the other, then you're out of line. So you need to correct that posture, and that should be the way you are all the time. So whether you sit or you stand or you kneel, that angle should be maintained. And one of the ways you maintain that is to have an engagement of your core. You don't have to be, Mr. Atlas and have your core all tight, but, about a 20% contraction of your core helps you to engage those muscles to keep your spine in line. And you have to develop an endurance. So if you're sitting at the computer or sitting down for hours on end, you need to stand up, especially early on if you're going to try to fix this, every 15 or so minutes, and look to see whether you're lined up, and realign yourself and engage your core, and then sit back down. The other thing that's, important is your mobility to be able to do that when you do a squat. You can Google a little kid squatting down. They have a perfect squat position. Their heels are on the ground. their butt's down, their spine, their back is straight, they're looking straight up. When I have people do squats in the office, oftentimes the first thing that happens is they bend over and they're looking at the ground. So if, try this at home. And if you're not, then usually it's because your ankles are really stiff and you don't have any mobility there. So you can do things by squatting at the side of a bed or the side of a bench and hanging on and working on the mobility of your ankles. A lot of people need to work on their hip mobilities. So there's a ton of things. One book that I would recommend is Kelly Starrett. The name of the book is Supple Leopard. It does a lot of mobility examples there, but you can also Google his website and see some great videos. The other thing, we talked a little bit about is movement and speed. To be able to move as people get older and the age, everything slows down. So if you can maintain some sense of speed, some sense of movement with the things that you do, that's a great thing. Hand grip is another thing. People lose strength in their arms. And at the computer with your hands in a certain position all day long, we lose wrist mobility. So working on your wrists and flexing them is very important to keep mobility. Carpal tunnel is not something that just is a surgical procedure. It can be corrected by improving your wrist mobility. And then this VO2 max, your ability to uptake oxygen. I've talked about it before. People that have elevated VO2 max have an increased life expectancy. So that means getting out and moving and, revving the engine. So just going out for a stroll with the dog, and the dog sniff all the time is not it's not the key to longevity. You got to get out and move it and rev the engine. So sometimes you could go out and, do light post to light post, speed up, slow down, do intervals on the treadmill. But you want to be able to increase your ability to uptake oxygen. By doing squats, you increase your muscle mass in your leg, you increase the mitochondria, and you increase the ability of the uptake of oxygen. So you're doing your weight training is really important. And doing something every day. I talked to somebody in the office, and they're like, well, when I was doing something 4 or 5 days a week, and it's like, why do you think that just 4 or 5 days a week you need to be active and you need to, to be completely sedentary the other days? It's just the other days your body is decaying. There's no reason why people can't be active for a couple hours every day. So you need to make time, just like you make time for brushing your teeth, cooking dinner, you need to make time to be active. And moving around and move your body. So don't be afraid to pick something up in the yard. Do yard work, do ladders in your house, whatever you can to keep moving is really great. My mom, she attributes using the dust mop. She has one of the big dust mops in the house. We have some wood floors and it looks like the one in the gym, not quite as big, but almost. And she'll go through and chase these German Shepherd hairs down in my house, and she attributes that to keeping her in shape. And when she's not doing that, she's, doing little laps around the yard, doing laps around the house, So at 85, she's getting 5,000, 7,000 steps a day. And it's a way that she keeps healthy and active. And at 85, she's, participated in our push-up challenge because she's maintained mobility. So that's extremely important to maintain your mobility in your upper years. So I really don't think that, people need a whole lot of fancy tests. I don't think you need to get radiated to know whether you've got calcium in your arteries. If you have these risk factors, then you're at risk for cardiovascular disease. I don't care what your calcium score is. If you have a low calcium score, it still doesn't mean you can't have soft plaque. We know from studies of war veterans that, in their 20s and 30s, they had significant plaque buildup already. So chances are, if you eat a standard American diet, you have a significant risk of plaque in your arteries if you're over age 25. So, it's time to change things. So again, what do? Whole food, plant-based diet. I love every meal. I look forward to it. I like the colors that I look at. I like the presentation of my plate. I never get tired of trying new recipes. So, enjoy the process. If you're just new to this, learn the simple things, learn how to chop efficiently, learn how to make simple salads, simple dishes, and then you can be creative on the weekends. Really, this way of eating is the best way to decrease your risk of lifestyle diseases. And then you can not worry about all these fancy tests. And there's no reason to have a false sense of security if a test is okay now, but you continue to eat poorly. It doesn't do anything to change. One negative test does not give you immunity for the rest of your life. So the earlier that you can adopt healthy plant-based eating for you and your family, the better off that you'll be. And if your family doesn't want to participate, then you can be the lighthouse. And if it's your children, well, that doesn't take very long, again, as I said before, because as long as they're not paying for the food, then they don't really get a vote. And they probably don't have more of a nutrition degree than you do. So if you're the cook, put good, healthy food on the table, and that's the best thing that you can do to help your family. And they'll thank you for it later. So if you would like some more information, please check out our website at drdulaney.com. It's DOCTORDULANEY. We have an extensive members-only section with recipes and exercise tips and videos and webinars and cooking demonstrations. So look about joining our practice so that you can get access to those things. We do 2 newsletters a month. There's a general newsletter, so you can sign up for that newsletter on that website. You can also sign up to get my weekly blog. I put a blog out every week discussing some health-related topic. So I'd love to have you get that as well as the recipes. If you'd like to take a tour of our practice, give me a call or an email, and we can set that up. You can email me with any questions at jami@drdulaney.com. It's JAMI@drdulaney.com. We'd love to help any athletes that are training to get the best out of best performance that they can by getting their nutrition spot on. So if you have any interest in that, we'd love to help you as well. But it doesn't matter what age, because you always have the ability to make things better. So get out this weekend and move your body, get some fresh air, eat some colorful vegetables. It's October, orange month, pumpkins, butternut squash, persimmons. So enjoy, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.